Okay, I had some luck sending Sysex messages to the KORG Volca FM to put old DX7 patches onto it, and just wanted to share with you guys how I was able to do it without buying a kind of standalone USB MIDI interface. I wanted to avoid buying one because I just don't use this stuff that often, and even that Roland cable, which is $80 just for this purpose, seemed like more than I was willing to spend. As a note, as you read on forums, the cheap kind of $5, $10, $20 MIDI to USB cables will not work for sending Sysex messages. What I'm using is a KORG Volca FM, the first version with 3-note polyphony, and it's got the unofficial firmware update on it. But what I'm going to show you will work on one that's has the original KORG firmware as well. Now this is the piece of kit that I wanted to test to see if I could use this as a MIDI interface. It's a Arturia the Player, kind of early 2000s MIDI keyboard controller, used typically for controlling an external synth. There's not a whole lot of information online about being able to use these controller keyboards as a kind of quasi MIDI interface, but I was able to do that successfully, which is what I'm going to show you. Interestingly, on forums you'll read, I saw newer keyboard controllers like the Arturia KeyStep is not able to do what I'm going to show you. It's not, maybe it's a Sysex issue, it's not able to send Sysex. In the manual for this one, I saw mention of Sysex, which made me think it could be a possibility. So the way the cables are run here, I've just got USB going from keyboard controller to the computer, then MIDI to MIDI out to MIDI in on the Volca. It's as simple as that. Make sure you've got really good batteries on your Volca. I had old batteries and that kept causing it to crash. Also close all other programs. I had SynthMata up on Chrome and that was messing with it as well. I've got Chrome open now, but just with the CC information on the unofficial firmware update of the Volca FM, which we'll get to in a minute. So how to do this now that we've got these connections, USB and MIDI created. If we open Dext, and if we go into this Palm section in the bottom left, now the DX7 channel set to 1. Also make sure the Volca FM is set under the global param settings on MIDI channel 1, and also your MIDI controller keyboard as well is on MIDI channel 1. That means they can all speak to each other. So when you first open Dext, it will say DX7 out none. Change this to the name of your MIDI keyboard. Mine's that Arturia the Player. That's step 1. Close that. That alone is not enough. You then need to go up here to Options, top left, Audio MIDI Settings. Now sometimes when you open this, this active MIDI input will look like that, and you kind of think that's green, that's fine. You actually have to tick it as well, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't know Dext very well. Now, this will be blank as well, MIDI output. This is critical that you also choose your MIDI keyboard here. So there's mine. Once it looks like that, we close this up. Now, the thing that gave me great joy was playing a note on here in Dext, and I could hear it in here under the chroma patch in my laptop, but also I was hearing music coming out of the Volca FM at the same time. So this made me think that my MIDI keyboard was acting as a bridge as I wanted it to. Similarly, if I play the MIDI keyboard and it's playing the Volca, it's also playing, as you can see, the note there in Dext. Now, this is nothing unusual for a USB MIDI interface, but it's kind of cool that I've been able to do this without needing to buy a MIDI interface just for loading Sysex patches. And how to do that? Well, we're currently on this really nice sounding, Faro patch in Dext. If we go to Cart, bottom left, and if we want to change it to, say, let's try Cascade. If we right click on Cascade, send program to DX7, Cascade 21. Now as I click that, let's see what happens. It changes, it goes across. That was a really exciting moment when I got that to work. Now, if you right click and instead go send current Sysex cartridge, what that will do is this whole cartridge here of I think 32 sounds, it'll take probably 5 to 10 seconds, but suddenly in the Volca, when you scroll through here, that all of your patches will be different. It's basically imported that whole set of 32 sounds into the Volca. Now in that unofficial firmware update, there is a setting that you set for DX7 compatibility, and that's something about when you bring in these patches, the operators are acting as they should. So generally, I greatly recommend that unofficial firmware update for Sysex Dext compatibility. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, because that unofficial firmware update, I'll just close Dext. It included also some stuff like this, which allows you using CC messages to change some more stuff on the Volca. The one that really interested me was chorus stereo width and chorus speed. I wanted to make the chorus sound a bit more intense. Here's the global compatibility bit that I was talking about. Number 10 in global settings switches between Yamaha compatibility and KORG proprietary. So the KORG one is just factory. The Yamaha compatibility, as they say, it makes importing patches from other devices work as it should. It will turn all the OPs on. Now, what I'm going to show you now, I just want to try to demonstrate sending CC messages to the Volca. Again, I don't have a USB interface as such. My keyboard controller is unable to send CC messages. So the way I want to do it is using this same setup with the controller acting as a USB MIDI interface, a bridge between the Volca and the laptop. Now the easiest way for a newbie like me, MIDI aux was a bit confusing. I found a program down here called Pocket MIDI. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at CC85 and we're going to try and turn the chorus on and off remotely using CC messages. So here we go. Now the first thing you want to do in here is go to input port and we want to choose the MIDI controller keyboard, the Arturia player. So I've chosen that, and then also output port, that may say not connected. We want to choose the same one, the player. Now that we've done that, if I press the player keyboard, we should see top left in Pocket MIDI, there's some info coming in there. Now what I want to demonstrate is, so if we go to views, in Pocket MIDI, I couldn't work out how to send control CC messages. I was down here typing stuff in and hitting send here and not having much luck transmit. There's probably a way to do that if you know what you're doing. But I ended up going to views, drop down is control change, and then it gives you the option 1 to 27, choose which value you want to change. So I'm going to choose 85 down here because CC85 is chorus on off. So if we are less than 64, it's going to be off. If we're over 64, it's going to be on. That's simple. So, and then here we've got the value. That's the channel 85 for CC message, and here's the value, 64. Now, over here, we've got the chorus on off. Now, what I want to show is changing the value over here is going to put this little light on and off, the chorus light. So here we go. If I move this up, you'll see that chorus light in the bottom right go on. I'll move it down, it will go off, on and off. So this is using MIDI CC messages to remotely control the KORG Volca FM. Obviously the value is not in switching the chorus on and off. For me, it was more about these two here. The chorus stereo width, jacking that up, and also messing with the speed a little bit. So that is how you can maybe get away with using some existing gear you have, a MIDI controller keyboard, and using that as a USB MIDI interface, both to send Sysex and CC messages to the KORG Volca FM without the need to buy an expensive cable or a dedicated USB MIDI interface unit. Thanks, team.